Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon everyone. Welcome to my channel. So today we're going to be solving the equation on the screen using the quadratic formula. And the first thing you're going to observe is that the equation does not really follow the general form of a quadratic equation. The general form of a quadratic equation, to remind you, is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a, the coefficient of x squared, so the value of a cannot be equal to 0, because then it's no longer a quadratic equation if this one equals 0. So what we can see right here is that the equation that we're given does not follow the form, the general form. So what you're supposed to do is to get this question that we have here to look like the general form, like this. So it's just going to be simple math. So you have 6x equals negative, open bracket, x squared plus 8. Well, since this is a negative value, we can expand and basically open the bracket. So we have 6x equals negative x squared minus 8. So what you have is x squared, right, plus 6x minus 8. So what we did here is to put all of this information on one side of the equation. So basically to add on the right hand side x squared as well as 8. So actually this is not supposed to be x squared plus 6x minus, it's supposed to be x squared plus 6x plus 8 equals 0. So what we did was basically add to the left hand side of the equation. We added plus x squared as well as plus 8, and here we added plus x squared and also plus 8, and when you do that, the right hand side is 0, the left hand side is basically what we have. So basically the equation we're going to be working with to solve for the values of x is going to be this equation. So now that this is done, we can go to the part that involves us using the quadratic formula. And we know the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root, and then you have b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So next thing you do is to just substitute the values into this equation. So just to jog your memory, since we already have the general form, right, the general form ax squared plus bx plus c, we can compare that to the actual equation that we have here. And comparing that, we know that a is equivalent to or is equals to the coefficient of x squared, and coefficient of x squared is 1, so a equals 1. B is equivalent to the coefficient of x, and the coefficient of x in this question is b equals positive 6. And then c is just a constant in the quadratic equation, so that will be c equals positive 8. So the smart thing you have to do is to basically substitute this in the quadratic formula, and we're going to go ahead and do that. So what we end up with is x equals negative b, so that's going to be negative 6 plus or minus the square root, and then you have b squared, so that will be 6 squared minus 4ac, so 4 times 1 times c. What is the value of c? C is positive 8, so we have that here, divided by 2a, so 2 times 1. So I'm going to continue this question on the next page. So just rewriting what we had in the previous page, we had x equals negative 6 plus or minus the square root 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times a divided by 2, because 2 times 1 is 2, so we don't have to do that. So that would be x here equals negative 6 plus or minus. So you have 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 8. So that 6 squared, we know that to be 36, right? 6 times 6 is 36. And we have a minus here. Then we have 4 times 1, that's 4. 4 times 8 is 32. So you have 32 here. So that divided by 2. So when you do that, you have negative 6 plus or minus 36 minus 32 is just 4 divided by the denominator 2. Let me write my 2 to look better. So that will be divided by 2. So you have x equals negative 6, right, plus or minus 4. Now this is where it gets interesting. One thing you need to remember is because quadratic equations have the highest power of x to have the value of 2, so it's not just x, and it's also something to be a quadratic equation, the highest power has to be 2, so it has to be x squared, x squared, x squared. That high power of 2 is telling you that you're going to have 2 solutions for x, right? 2 solutions of x means 2 values of x. So hence, this is a part where we know this is x1, and then there's going to be x2. And the way you're going to have x1 different from x2 is the information of the plus and minus here. For x1, you have negative 6 plus square root of 4. I don't have to write square root of 4. I'm just going to say square root of 4 is 2 because that's what it is, divided by 2. And then you have the same thing, x2. You have plus or minus. We already did plus, so we're just going to work with the other potential answer for the root. So you have negative 6 minus 2 divided by 2. So x1 equals negative 6 plus 2, same thing as negative 4 divided by 2. Then x2 equals negative 6, negative 2 is just negative 8 divided by 2. Negative 4 divided by 2 is just 2. So actually negative 2 because there's a negative. And then you have 2 here, 1, 2 in negative 8 is just negative 4. So you have the value of x1 to be negative 2 and x2 to be negative 4. Hence, the answers to this quadratic equation is negative 2 and negative 4. Now, this video is part of the SAT Math Prep series. Make sure you learn the different formulas, whether it's square root method, the quadratic formula, the factorization method, and the graphing method, as well as the completing the square method. But one thing I'm going to tell you guys, a great tip is that the quadratic formula solves all quadratic equations. Use the quadratic formula if you get stuck. I wish you guys all the very best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.